The lobby floor was a glacier of polished white marble, so cold and pristine that Sarah's worn-down heels seemed to commit a sin with every click. She clutched her resume, the paper damp with the sweat of her palm, and adjusted the strap of the diaper bag, digging into her shoulder. In the sleek, modern chair beside her, 5-year-old Lily was a vibrant, fidgeting splash of color in a world of monochrome minimalism. She was humming softly, her small legs swinging, kicking the air with scuffed little shoes. "Remember what Mommy said, Sweet Pea?" Sarah whispered, leaning down. "We have to be very, very quiet. Like little church mice." "But we're not in church," Lily whispered back, her wide, curious eyes taking in the towering ceiling. "We're in a giant's castle." Sarah forced a smile, her heart a frantic bird against her ribs. "This is a mistake. This is the biggest mistake of your life." The voice in her head was a familiar, cruel companion. But what choice did she have? The daycare had called an hour before the biggest interview of her life. Lily had a fever. They couldn't keep her. Sarah's babysitter network had evaporated like morning mist. It was this or forfeit. Forfeit meant another month of choosing between electricity and groceries. Forfeit meant another night of crying silent tears into her pillow, wondering how she'd ever climb out of this hole. Ms. Evans, a woman with a severe black bob and a frown that looked permanently etched into her face, stood by a glass door. Ms. Albright, the HR manager, her eyes, sharp as flint, immediately dropped to Lily, and her lips pursed as if she'd just tasted something sour. Sarah's stomach plummeted. "Yes, that's me. Thank you for seeing me." She ushered Lily into the interview room, a sterile space, with a long table that reflected the harsh fluorescent lights. Sarah tried to sit Lily in the far corner with a coloring book and a sippy cup, a pathetic peace offering to the gods of corporate decorum. Ms. Albright took her seat at the head of the table, not bothering to hide her disdain. "This is highly irregular, Miss Evans. Viridian Technologies is a place of business, not a playground." "I understand, and I sincerely apologize," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. She willed it steady. "There was a childcare emergency. It won't impact my ability to perform the duties of the executive assistant position. I'm prepared, I'm organized, and let's begin," Ms. Albright interrupted, her tone dismissing the explanation entirely. The questions started, rapid fire and cold. Sarah answered them, her mind racing, her ears straining for any sound from Lily. For 10 glorious minutes, it worked. Lily was engrossed in her coloring, a masterpiece of purple and green scribbles. Sarah began to hope a fragile, dangerous thing. Then it happened. Reaching for her sippy cup, Lily knocked it over. The water, thank God it was only water, spilled onto the table and dripped onto the plush ivory-colored carpet, leaving a dark, spreading stain. Ms. Albright shot to her feet as if electrocuted. "That is a custom Berber carpet." "I'm so sorry." Sarah scrambled, grabbing napkins from her bag and dabbing at the mess. It was futile. The stain was a declaration of war in this sterile battlefield. Lily, sensing the shift in atmosphere, began to cry. It wasn't a loud wail, but a soft, terrified whimper that broke Sarah's heart clean in two. "That's quite enough," Ms. Albright said, her voice icy. She picked up Sarah's resume as if it were contaminated. "Ms. Evans, your qualifications are adequate. But this position requires absolute professionalism, focus, and an environment free from distractions." Her gaze flicked to Lily, who was now clinging to Sarah's leg. "A lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on ours. I'm afraid you are not a suitable fit for Viridian." The words were a physical blow. Sarah felt the heat of shame flood her cheeks. The hope she'd been nurturing shattered, and the sharp pieces lodged in her throat. She looked down at Lily's tear-streaked face, at the small body trembling against her. In that moment, the humiliation was a living thing, coiling in her gut. "My daughter is not a distraction," Sarah said, her voice low but suddenly, fiercely steady. She stood up, gathering Lily into her arms. The weight of her child was a grounding force. "She is my responsibility, my emergency. And any planning requires a support system or a financial stability that, quite frankly, I'm here to try and achieve." You saw a child in a boardroom and judged my capability. You didn't see the single mother who taught herself advanced Excel at midnight after working 2 shifts, or the woman who is fighting for a better life. You're lost, Ms. Albright. She turned, her head high, the tears she refused to shed burning behind her eyes. She walked out of the room, through the glacial lobby, and toward the elevator. Each step feeling like a funeral march for a future that had just been stolen. The elevator doors slid open. Just as she reached them, a man in an impeccably tailored charcoal gray suit stepped out. He had an air of quiet authority, his gaze sharp and missing nothing. For a fleeting second, his eyes met Sarah's. He saw the defiant set of her jaw, the sheen of unshed tears, and the little girl hiding her face in her mother's neck. His brow furrowed slightly. Sarah brushed past him, the scent of his expensive cologne, a stark contrast to the smell of baby shampoo and desperation. The elevator doors closed, sealing her in with her failure. Ms. Albright had hurried out of the interview room, flustered. Mr. Thorne? I apologize, sir. A minor. A situation with an unprofessional candidate? It's been handled. The man, Alexander Thorne, CEO of the multi-billion-dollar empire she was standing in, didn't look at her. He was staring at the closed elevator doors, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. He had seen the woman's resume, discarded on the interview table as he passed the open door. The name, Sarah Evans, was circled in red pen. And he had seen the child, a little girl with hair the color of sunshine. The candidate with the child, he said, his voice deceptively calm. What was her name? Evans, sir. Sarah Evans. She brought her toddler to a professional interview. It was completely unacceptable. I terminated the interview immediately. Alexander Thorne turned his gaze slowly toward Ms. Albright. The air in the lobby seemed to grow colder, thinner, unacceptable. He repeated, the words soft, dangerous. Fetch me her file. Now, and her resume. Do not touch that interview room. Ms. Albright paled. Sir, I don't understand. The little girl, he interrupted, his voice cracking with a raw emotion he couldn't suppress. What was her name? I believe the mother called her Lily. The name hung in the air between them. Alexander Thorne closed his eyes for a brief second as if in pain. When he opened them, they were blazing with a terrifying intensity. Her name is Lily, he whispered. Then, louder, his voice a command that brooked no argument. Get me everything, and cancel my morning. I need to see that interview room. Sarah drove home on autopilot, the world outside the car window, a blur of color and noise. Lily, exhausted from the ordeal, had fallen asleep in her car seat, her breathing a soft, rhythmic comfort in the heavy silence. The brave facade Sarah had worn in the lobby had crumbled, leaving behind a hollow, aching exhaustion. She had failed. Again, at home, in their small, cluttered apartment that smelled of old dreams and microwave noodles, she put Lily to bed. She then sank onto the worn sofa, burying her face in her hands. The tears finally came, silent and hopeless. She had been so close. The salary, the benefits. It was a lifeline she had watched drift away. Hours later her phone buzzed, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Her heart leapt with a foolish residual hope maybe it was another company. But the voice on the other end was chillingly familiar. It was Ms. Albright. Her tone, however, was completely different. Gone was the icy disdain, replaced by a strained, almost frightened politeness. Ms. Evans, this is Helena Albright from Viridian. Mr. Thorne, our CEO, was made aware of your situation this morning. He was deeply impressed by your credentials and would like to apologize for the manner in which the interview was concluded. He is personally offering you the position. The salary will be 20% higher than advertised, with full family health benefits and an on-site corporate childcare facility. Sarah held the phone, stunned into silence. It made no sense. It was a trick. It had to be. Why? Was all she could manage. Double quotes. Mr. Thorne believes in second chances, Miss Albright said, the words sounding rehearsed. He insists. Can you start tomorrow? His driver will pick you up at 8? Dazed, Sarah agreed. The next morning, a sleek black town car indeed idled at her curb. The drive to Viridian was surreal. She was ushered not to the HR department, but directly to the top floor, the sanctum sanctorum, the CEO's office. It was a glass-walled corner of the world, overlooking the entire city. Alexander Thorne stood by the window, his back to her. He turned as she entered, and in the daylight he looked older than she'd first thought, with lines of strain around his eyes. "Ms. Evans," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Thorne," she said, her own voice formal. Tight with suspicion, he gestured for her to sit. He didn't sit behind his monolithic desk, but took a chair opposite her. He seemed to be studying her, his gaze lingering on her face with an intensity that was unnerving. "The incident yesterday. I need you to know that Ms. Albright's behavior does not reflect the values of this company, not my values." He paused, choosing his words with immense care. "Being a parent, it changes everything. It makes you brave in ways you never thought possible." Sarah simply nodded, unsure of where this was going. "Your daughter," he continued, and his voice hitched, just barely. "Lily, she's beautiful." The way he said her name, it wasn't the casual observation of a benevolent boss. It was filled with a profound, aching weight. A memory, sharp and painful, stabbed at Sarah's mind. A photograph. A man she had tried to forget. She has. Her mother's eyes, Alexander Thorne said softly, his own eyes glistening. "But her hair, that blonde hair, that's from me." The world stopped. The air was sucked from the room. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, trapped thing. She stared at him, truly seeing him now. Past the expensive suit, the power, the years. She saw the young, ambitious intern she had met a lifetime ago at a summer corporate program. The man she had fallen for. The man who had chosen his career trajectory, a fast track to Singapore, over the girl he'd gotten pregnant. The man who, when she'd tearfully told him the news, had handed her a check and told her it was for the best. "I'm not father material, Sarah. This isn't the life I want." "No," she whispered, the word a breath of denial. "It can't be you, Alex. Alex Reynolds. Changed my name when my mother remarried. Thorne is my stepfather's name. It's legally mine." He leaned forward, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. "I didn't know, Sarah. I swear to you I didn't know. I thought you'd used the money. I thought it was handled." The twist of the knife was exquisite. He had thought she'd gotten an abortion. The check, his final, cowardly solution, had been his closure. "I couldn't," she choked out, tears streaming down her face freely now. "I loved her from the moment I knew. I've raised her alone. Every scraped knee, every sleepless night, every fear. All alone." The pain on his face was raw, unfiltered. "I saw her yesterday. I saw her little face, and it was like looking at a ghost. My sister had hair like that when she was little. I knew, in my soul, I knew." He stood up, pacing like a caged animal. "I had my assistant pull the security footage from the lobby camera. I zoomed in on her face. She's the same age. I did the math, Sarah. I have a daughter." He stopped in front of her, his own eyes wet. "All these years, I built all of this." He gestured to the empire outside the window. "And I have a daughter who doesn't know my name. You were right, what you said to Albright. You are a fighter. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And I am so, so sorry." Sarah was trembling, a maelstrom of emotions, old hurt, blinding rage, and a terrifying, fragile sliver of something else. Pity. Could it be forgiveness? "What do you want, Alexander?" she asked, her voice hollow. "A chance," he pleaded, his CEO persona completely gone, leaving just a broken, regretful man. "Not to be her CEO, a chance to be her father. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it, but please, don't punish her for my mistakes. Let me provide for her, for both of you." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small, faded photograph. It was of the two of them, 6 years ago, young and smiling, arms wrapped around each other at a company picnic she had kept. A copy of the same photo and a box of memories she could never bring herself to throw away. "I never forgot you, Sarah," he whispered. "I was just a coward. Sarah looked from the ghost of their past in the photograph to the living, breathing consequence of his choices standing before her. The millionaire CEO hadn't walked in and saved a single mom from humiliation. He had walked in and come face to face with the devastating, beautiful cost of his own ambition. And the heartbreaking drama was no longer about a job. It was about whether a little girl with sunshine in her hair would ever have a father, and whether a love shattered by rejection could ever be pieced back together, not for romance, but for the sake of the child they had both failed. In very different ways. The interview was over. Far more complicated and painful negotiation had just begun.